I do not accept that answer. We've heard that one. We are our own committee. We have our own reason to test your credibility and veracity. Please answer the question, why did you lie to the Post? Beyond AdFin, what other financial ties do you have to Jeffrey Epstein? I wonder if President Trump is concerned about you and your family profiteering off the illegal tariffs. Survivors came to me, told me their horrific stories, and the survivors I spoke with had one message. They're seeking accountability and justice. After speaking with the survivors, I again went to the Department of Justice to review the unredacted Epstein files, to seek accountability and justice for the victims, the more than 1,000 victims and survivors. And today, Secretary Lutnick, I have some questions for you about what I saw. Let's start with your relationship with sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. In October, you told the New York Post with colorful narration that the last time you saw Jeffrey Epstein was in 2005 when you took a tour of his house, which happened to be right next door to yours. You claim you and your wife were so grossed out by this disgusting person, you swore you would never go back. But when the Epstein files came out, it turned out that was a lie. You were forced to admit that you had visited Epstein's private island in 2012, 4 years after Epstein pled guilty soliciting a minor for prostitution and was labeled a sex offender. You brought along your wife, your kids, your nannies to the predator's island. Incredibly poor judgment. But that even wasn't the whole truth. It turns out that 5 days after visiting his island, you and Epstein signed a business deal together. As co-investors in a digital advertising company, AdFin, and emails showed you stayed in touch with Epstein about this deal as late as 2018. Secretary Lutnick, why did you lie to the New York Post about your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
While Representative Dean lays out a meticulous paper trail linking the Commerce Secretary directly to Epstein's network, the political damage extends far beyond this hearing room. Just weeks before this confrontation, the massive public release of over 3 million pages of Justice Department records completely shattered Lutnick's original timeline of his associations. But watch how the Secretary attempts to bypass this public inquiry by pointing to an entirely separate, closed-door congressional venue.
Oh, I did hear that. Please don't repeat your gracious offer to speak behind closed doors, not under oath, without the ability of this committee to question you. The American people wants to know, why did you lie about your relationship with Epstein?
The House Oversight Committee and I have agreed
we are
will
the
spend
appropriate
the time
reclaiming
together.
my time. I do not accept that answer. We've heard that one. We are our own committee. We have our own reason to test your credibility and veracity. Please answer the question, why did you lie to the Post?
I have voluntarily agreed to spend the time and talk about it.
I reclaim the time. Let the record reflect you're dodging the question. The cover-up continues. You know what? In your conversations with the president, is the president concerned about your continued relationship that you had with Mr. Epstein as recently as 2018?
I'm not going to discuss conversations I have with the president. That is not something I'm going to do.
If you remember in that interview, you said you would never be in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. President Trump has just fired 3 cabinet secretaries, 3 women, Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, Lori Chavez DeRemer. If President Trump has even a shred of concern about accountability for Jeffrey Epstein's enablers, he would fire you too. Beyond AdFin, what other financial ties do you have to Jeffrey Epstein?
Dean's refusal to back down highlights a major structural rift across Capitol Hill. While Republican leadership heavily shielded Lutnick during his eventual non-videotaped oversight deposition, rank-and-file committee members used public funding hearings to keep the pressure mounting. But look at how Dean pivots from these toxic personal associations to hit the secretary on a massive corporate corruption allegation involving his own family.
As I said, I'm going to answer all these
Beyond
questions.
AdFin, What other financial ties? You're the Commerce Secretary. We have a right to ask this question and get it answered.
Again, I'm not going to spend the budget day discussing something I've set aside time to spend on this topic
I'm going to
with your
switch
House
topics.
colleagues.
Let me switch topics. A different and equally disturbing issue, how your family is profiting from your work as Commerce Secretary. Let's start with tariffs. You and the President illegally imposed the highest tariffs on the American people since the Great Depression. And your sons figured out how to profit from the high tariffs by buying up refund rights, pennies on the dollar, just as you were out there cheerleading the tariffs. As a result, federal taxpayers like my constituents may now owe your family tens of or hundreds of millions of dollars. I wonder if President Trump is concerned about you and your family profiteering off the illegal tariffs.
You know that is false. Here's reporting. I'd like to put it in the record. Howard Lutnick's old firm did not, in fact, profit from Supreme Court tariff ruling. It is just
It's your
not
sons.
true.
It's your sons. The reporting
his
is
old firm and my sons. It is not
Mr. Chairman,
true.
reclaiming
and you
my
know
time.
it's not true.
I have
it's
asked
not true.
Mr. Chairman, reclaiming about 20 seconds. I hope you recognize how fundamentally wrong and corrupt this is. I hope you take accountability and have the decency to resign before you are fired.
It's not true.
The fierce confrontation between Representative Madeleine Dean and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has solidified into a defining case study on the boundaries of executive oversight. The fallout from this specific exchange directly accelerated a broader political crisis inside the administration. Following the dramatic release of the Epstein files by the Department of Justice, Lutnick was forced into a highly defensive posture after independent journalists and congressional investigators unearthed concrete contracts and signed signatures proving that his initial public narrative, claiming he had entirely cut off contact with the disgraced financier in 2005, was entirely false. When we analyzed the mechanics of the cross-examination, Dean's strategy was structurally devastating because it paired toxic personal liabilities with explicit allegations of institutional corruption. By directly putting the timeline of the 2012 AdFin digital advertising venture on the record, signed just days after Lutnick took his family to the private island of Little St. James, Dean effectively dismantled the argument that the secretary was a passive, distant neighbor. Lutnick's defense mechanism, which relied heavily on a procedural deferral strategy by pointing to his scheduled, non-public testimony before James Comer's House Oversight Committee, was completely exposed on the floor as a non-transparent dodge. The final segment of the exchange introduced a secondary operational scandal that has plagued the Commerce Department throughout 2026. The intersection of sweeping tariff regimes and private family profiteering. Dean's sharp interrogation exposed allegations that Lutnick's sons actively purchased tariff refund rights, effectively converting federal trade policies into a private family windfall. While Lutnick vehemently denied the financial scope of these claims by referencing retroactive corporate statements, the optical damage of a sitting Commerce Secretary managing sweeping national tariffs, while his immediate family navigates adjacent financial markets, remained a permanent vulnerability. Ultimately, this entire committee battle serves as a historical marker for the intense partisan warfare defining modern Washington. To his defenders, Secretary Lutnick was a target of highly sensationalized political theater, facing an aggressive smear campaign over historical, incidental neighborhood contact and standard private sector investments executed years prior to his public service. To his critics, Dean's blistering cross-examination provided definitive, public proof of an administration compromised by elite networks, corporate entitlement, and a systemic refusal to offer direct accountability to the American taxpayer.